All right, well, good afternoon. It's Dawn in the garage again, feeling young and spry as a spring chicken. So I am out here in the garage again. We're working on the Jeep. I'm going to get into these fenders and get some of these things mounted up today. But if you watched the last episode, you saw I was struggling a little bit to kind of have to bend the fenders in just a little bit, get them to stay in place while I line them up. I've got some helping hands today, so give me a second. I'll show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so I ran myself down to Home Depot and I picked up a bunch of these little 1-inch clamps. I don't need much. I just need about a 1/2 inch to clamp the fender flare to the fender. So I got me about a 6 of these things, and I think what I'll be able to do is put about 3 or 4 of them holding top to bottom the lip to the lip of the fender, and then maybe 1 or 2 others pressing the fender flare up against the fender. But before I really get into it, I got 2 things I got to do. First of all, each one of these has got this stupid little barcode label right on the threaded part of the clamp. Got to get rid of those. And second of all, I'm a little worried about my paint. Well, I'm not worried, but I'm just, in a spirit of keeping that really in good shape. So I'm going to take some trusty blue tape. I'm going to pull that fender off, and I'm going to put me a piece of blue tape around the opening so that as I'm working on this fender, this flare, it's going up against the blue tape. And what I'm hoping is I'll be able to take a small, like a wooden number 2 pencil, and break it off really short so that I can get up in this little gap that I have here to make a mark. So again, I don't know if I really explained it very well. Let's see if I can explain it with the fender. So this is the one for the other side. So you can see our rounded part of this thing dipping down here, and you can see our lip, right? And then you can see the hole through the fender right there. So what I need to do, if you look at this thing, is as it's on the fender up there, I got to get up in there and make a mark in that hole right up in there where my finger is. And you can see how much my finger's curved to get into that spot. I got to find some way of marking that. So what I'm thinking is, again, if I have this thing clamped in place and I break off a little chunk of a number 2 pencil and I have some blue tape up in there, I think I'll be able to just reach up, draw a circle where, mark where my holes need to go, and then also leave the blue tape there, which should hopefully help me from kind of having issues when I start drilling. That's my plan. Things don't always go to plan, but let's see how this one works. All right, well, my helping hands helped these 2 hands get the job done here to hold this thing in place. So come down here and I will show you what we did. So you can see I put some clamps in here holding the lip to the fender lip. So I've got one in the top, got one in the back, and then I put a couple in here to kind of pull the thing back against the fender. So it's in there tight enough now that I can get my holes marked. Now my only challenge is to go find a number 2 pencil and sacrifice it to the job at hand of marking these. But yeah, that worked out pretty good. So again, just go to Home Depot or Lowe's or someplace like that and pick yourself up, if you don't already have some, these little 1-inch clamps. I mean, they're like $2 or $3 a piece. I got 6 of them. I only used 5, although I'll probably need 6 when I get to the front fender because it's going to be a little trickier. It'll probably take several to hold it in place. But yeah, it worked out pretty good. So I'm off to find a pencil. You know, out here in the garage, I've got Sharpies and I've got carpenter's pencils, but I just need an old number 2 pencil that I can break and make really short. So I got to go find one of those. There's probably one up in the drawer or something. So I'll do that. I'll be back. We'll make some marks. Well, on more than one occasion, I've thought to myself, wouldn't it be handy when working on this Jeep if I had 2 more elbows in my arm at right angles to each other or that bent in different directions so that I could get in all these tight little places. So it was a bit of a struggle getting that back fender on for a couple of reasons. First of all, I did not find a number 2 pencil. So I cut off a chunk of a carpenter's pencil, sharpened it down really good. That just didn't make a great mark. So I'm going to revisit that when I start on the front. Second of all, what you do is you drill your holes. So I got all holes drilled. You drill a 7/32 hole or something like that. I forget. Anyway, you've got this little screw that goes in there with a 5/16 hex head on it, and it's got a slot for a straight screw driver as well. And then on the inside, on the flare, so what you do is you push the screw through once you get your hole drilled and your flare lined up. So the screw comes from the inside of the fender out towards the flare. And then once that gets through the hole, then you have this little plastic nut kind of thing that you screw into. So that went pretty good on, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those, I think, on each one. 5 of those weren't too bad. There's one on the front area here. There's one right about here that you can see that it's that one right there, okay? And you can see there's not much screw sticking out of it. I could not get on that because this section of the tub right here is really, really close to the lip of the fender. So if that screw's not perfectly straight, and even I think if it is, you can't really get your socket in there to get a socket on the thing. This one down here was a bit of a struggle because it seems like the screw had kind of caught the metal, and so it didn't want to turn any further. But the rest of them are all in there, and you can see that they're all there, and there's a good amount of thread sticking out of each of them, out of that screw. So that's done. And I've come up here to the front, and I've repeated the ritual. So I've got my blue tape there. I now have this fender taped in place, or sorry, clamped in place with my little clamps. But a couple things happened. One, I opened up the garage door for a little bit and it had rained on me. So then the sun came out and whoo, the humidity just went through the roof. So it got really hot. So I need to take a break. This back one, I found that the only way to really get this thing done was I had to take the tire off so I could get my head up in the fender and see what was going on there. So I'll probably have the same issue on the front, but that carpenter's pencil is too imprecise. It won't go in there into that hole. I need a number 2 pencil sharpened up to like a very sharp point so I can get in there and do a better job of getting that hole right where I want it, because if I'm off a little bit, then the screw has a tendency to kind of go in, a little bit of an angle, which then makes it very difficult to get my socket on the back side of the thing to tighten her down. So fiddly that job was, and it's taken me several hours to get one fender on here. And I tried to do it without taking the tire off for a while. I learned my lesson. I'll take the tire off in the front when I start on it. But I've got a couple other things I need to get done tonight, so I'm going to leave that one clamped up in there, and next time around I'll do a better job of drawing my hole, and then I'll get the holes drilled, and hopefully it'll be a little better lined up. But yeah, I'm not going to bother making you watch me do the whole thing. I'll show you the finished product when we're done, but boy, it's a fiddly little job. So if you think you're just going to slap those fender flares on in a half an hour, you're not. Just plan out a couple hours per fender, or 2 or 3, and probably, again, save yourself some time, just take the tire off so you can get your head right up in the fender, because you got to get it in there. You got to get your head up in there and look backwards, and so you need another joint in your neck too. So I don't know, maybe it'd be easier if I just flipped the Jeep over on its top and worked on these facing down, but yeah, went okay. It's lined up really good on the back here. It's right at the bottom of the fender. When we come around here to the front, it's down a little bit below the fender right there, or the tub. It just sucks being a perfectionist, because I worked really hard to make sure that was lined up right, and then once it's in there, it's a little longer than the opening. The front one looks like it's going to line up good. I've got it pretty much where I want it here, and pretty much where I want it here, And I'm kind of checking it against my light opening here to make sure that we're equidistant on the sloped edge. I might have to move my blue tape to make sure I can see that well right there. But yeah, this is one of those jobs that I thought was going to be easy and is not. But looks good. I did have some, at one point I had bought some, you know, those big wide fenders that are on the newer Jeeps. And I put it on that CJ-5 when I started working on that. But I don't know, man. I just think these little guys here are just kind of classic Jeep, and they look good. So they look good. Just not easy to put on there. So yeah, I'm wrapping it up for now. I'll see you again soon.
Yeah.